Hello everybody, and welcome to the Thursday edition of Video Clips. And I have a couple things to talk about today, and one is dementia patients. Many people who have family members who have dementia struggle with how to care for these people. Drugs are not very effective, and sometimes the only choice is to place a dementia patient in an institution. A growing number of patients actually specialize in caring for these types of people, but often patients are drugged so that they're easier to manage. And family members become justifiably concerned as they watch a loved one, parent, grandparent, whoever, get considerably worse, not only as the result of the institutionalization, but increasing use of drugs. But drugging may not be necessary. According to KJ Page, administrator of a place called Chaparral House in Berkeley, California, dementia patients often show up at facilities like the one that she's employed by with instructions for drugging. And so she says that several years ago her perspective about this changed when she read a book called Bathing Without a Battle about why dementia patients can be so hard to manage at Bath and other times. And so she says, just imagine you have dementia and you're in a strange place called the institution, right? And then strangers, people you don't know, are trying to take off your clothes before bath. It's probably not surprising that residents scream and fight with people trying to do this to them. She reports that the staff at her facility decided to take some action to lower the agitation level. And what they did was they decided, first of all, that some showers could be replaced by sponge baths that would be given by caregivers who were familiar to the patients. And it reduced agitation so much that they decided that they would look at other opportunities to help the patients without drugs and restraints. And as a result of all of this, by the way, not a single patient at Chaparral House takes antipsychotic medication at this point in time. 3 years ago, the Department of Health and Human Services began regulating the use of antipsychotic drugs in nursing homes as a result of several studies showing how bad they really were for the patients. Increased risk of things like strokes and falls and death. One of the criteria for grading nursing homes now is the percentage of patients who are taking antipsychotic drugs. So reducing medication, it's incentivized at this point in time, but it means that staff members have had to learn new techniques for controlling patients. And I guess this is kind of a happy report today, some of the innovative things that are going on. Caroline Stevens is an assistant professor in the nursing school at the University of California, San Francisco. She specializes in psychiatric care for elderly people and trains nurses and staff in what she calls patient-centered care, which means trying to understand and address patient issues when many of these people just are not very good at communicating what's going on. So a couple of examples, and I love these. She cites an example of how one patient tried to leave the facility every day. He would tell the people running the place, I have to catch the bus and go home to take care of my daughter, which really his daughter was grown, but that's not the point. Staff posted a sign on the door that said it's a holiday, buses aren't running today. And this person stopped fighting and trying to leave and never had to be drugged or restrained. Another patient used to wander around late at night, and he would pop in the various other patients' rooms, which was disruptive. Well, the staff looked into it and discovered that he used to be a late-night security guard. So what they did is they gave him a badge and a clipboard, and before bedtime they'd help walk him through the facility so he could take notes and check everything out, and then they'd put him in bed, and he'd sleep through the night and he'd stop wandering around and bothering the other patients. He didn't require any drugs. Unfortunately, this type of creativity, while it's documented to work, is not used everywhere. In California, the use of the overall use of antipsychotic drugs has dropped, but several hundred nursing homes have the same or even increased rates of use, and in some homes the rate has doubled. Now, there are some reasons for this, including the fact that patients are cherry-picked by some institutions because they know that their performance rating is going to be related to medication rates. But the bottom line is that families in all states can check the medication rates for nursing homes on websites like Nursing Home Compare. And I have the website on the link in the article, which will be posted later today. so that they can select facilities that really minimize or use no drugs as they're caring for patients. Now, the first thing to remember about this is there are a lot of proven ways to avoid dementia and Alzheimer's disease. Eating well, exercise, staying socially engaged, doing mentally challenging things. There are a lot of interventions that work for early stage patients. Eating well, exercise, social interaction, working your brain. But for families who have family members who are just too far gone, and there is not going to be any coming back, and you're facing that uncomfortable task of trying to find the right institution, do check this out before you commit your loved one, because there are some that are clearly better than others, and less drugging is always better. So anyway, second topic today, genetic testing. I've talked a lot about this. I'm not too keen on it, even though it's the shiny new thing in medicine. And studies, but one of the reasons I'm not too keen on it is studies just haven't demonstrated that a lot of benefit is coming from all this testing that we do. Women in particular are nagged to get the gene test, to have gene testing done to determine if they're carriers for the BRCA1 or 2 genes, gene mutations, which increase the risk of breast and or ovarian cancer. Well, as is the case of almost all medical tests and treatments, the benefits of genetic testing are overemphasized. Nobody talks about the risks. And one of the reasons women are scared into getting this test done is they're told, listen, if you're one of the carriers of the gene mutation, the likelihood is almost certain that you're going to develop breast cancer over time or ovarian cancer. That's actually not true, and you can look at some other articles posted in the HealthBrace online library to check that out. In the case of the testing for BRCA mutations, there are several risks, and here they are. They include turning healthy people into worried and sick patients. Gilbert Welch, in his book Less Medicine, More Health, says health is not only a state of being, it's a state of mind. So when everybody's all worried and concerned about stuff, that's not so good for health. Risks associated with prophylactic surgery. Anytime you have surgery, there's a risk associated with it. Increased risks associated with hormone replacement therapy, which is almost required if young women have their ovaries taken out. And a false sense of security that cancer risk has been addressed and they don't have to worry about it anymore, which is not true. Gene carriers for these particular mutations, both men and women, have higher risk, for example, of pancreatic cancer. We're not suggesting taking out their pancreas, so it would be a good idea to teach them how to eat well so that they don't end up with pancreatic cancer. So part of the problem with the whole medical system is the testing and the drugs and the surgeries and all that sort of thing make people feel safe, and it's a false sense of safety and security. Well, I want to talk about a study that looked at prophylactic mastectomy. A Dutch study shows that the benefits of prophylactic mastectomy are not quite so clear as have been represented to women. Researchers followed women with the BRCA1 and 2 mutations, but who didn't have any cancer at the start of the study. Women who had bilateral mastectomy had a 99% 10-year survival rate. Women in the surveillance group, no surgery, 96% survival rate. We're talking about a 3% advantage having both of your breasts removed. One woman in the surgery group died of cancer. She didn't develop breast cancer, but did develop metastases in the lymph nodes, bone, and liver following her surgery. It goes to my point. Just taking off the breast doesn't eliminate your risk of cancer. And 6 women died of cancer in the surveillance group, 4 of them from breast cancer. So 2 of the deaths were not attributable to breast cancer. In other words, and then longer term, during 1,379 person years of observation in the mastectomy group, there was no breast cancer. Roughly 2 times that number of person years in the surveillance group, there were 57 cases of breast cancer. So there were more diagnoses of breast cancer in the surveillance group, but the mortality rate wasn't significantly different. And I think that what women really want, what all people really want, is a long and healthy life, not just more procedures. If you're going to die at the same time anyway, why do you want to live for the next however many years without your breast? And there are also, in those 57 cases of breast cancer, there's a lot we don't know, like how many of those cases were actually ductal carcinoma in situ, which isn't cancer and doesn't usually progress to cancer. It's almost certain that these women were not educated about optimal diet and lifestyle choices and weight loss and things that would reduce their risk. So the researchers actually reported that while prophylactic surgery reduced the incidence of breast cancer, and this is a quote, longer-term follow-up is warranted to confirm survival benefits. It is not clear that all of this testing and surgery is improving the length of anybody's life. For many women, the decision to have this surgery is made in a highly emotional state, worst time to make a decision about anything, particularly health, while family members are in a highly emotional state and doctors pressuring them to do it. I think that if women would take a breath, and I talk about this a lot with people who come into the Wellness Forum, obviously you have to make a decision about this now that it has been brought up, but you don't have to do it by tomorrow morning. You have time to take a breath, look at all the information, look at the risks, look at the benefits, and then make a decision and try to calm down the family members. If you're a family member of somebody who's facing this kind of decision, screaming and hollering at them and saying, oh my gosh, please stay alive for your children, and trying to encourage them to have useless tests and procedures, not really so helpful, you know. So, and I feel the pain of people who sit and talk with me about this when family members are trying to pressure them into doing something that they don't want to do and that the evidence doesn't support. But the take-home point here is this stuff just isn't quite as fabulous as it has been represented to be. So that is all for today. As usual, have a great weekend and a wonderful rest of the week, and I will be back to you on Tuesday with more news.